and then the learners can use that to help them learn the language, and they can hopefully create a relationship with an older person, because one of the big problems we have is that many of the learners don't actually know any native speakers, because there are very few left. So we're going to try to recruit. We're trying to basically, we are going around talking to everyone, joining the dots, because people in the island don't always talk to each other, strangely enough. And hopefully, everyone's been very supportive, and hopefully that will kick off. We're going to start training people at Easter time. Okay, so I think language policy is not only about language. One of the things we find here, as I said, that Guernsey, Jersey and the Isle of Man, which is another island, British island, which has a similar sociolinguistic situation but very different language, they tend to promote their linguistic heritage for distinctiveness, but unfortunately that does not require fluent use of a living language. And so we get this, if we go on to the next slide please. This is a picture on the left from Jersey Museum. On the face of it, it's very useful language documentation. You've got all the parts of an old-fashioned boat. On the right, you've got some postcards which were sent to me by a language activist in Guernsey. They are produced by an estate agent. He was moving house. Sorry, I dropped them in some water before I photographed them, so they're not very good quality. But it says, it's supposed to say in Genesee we are moving house, but it's extremely bad translation. You would not know it said that. And also the photos are of old-fashioned themes. So all of this is giving the impression that it's the language of the past. People don't see it, even the old native speakers don't see it as something which can continue into the future. They see it as something nostalgic, something representative of the past. Next slide. Okay, so when you have a language festival, this is the festival. You see these two ladies on the left, they're from mainland Normandy. They have these wonderful headdresses, similar to the Breton headdresses. And the ladies on the right, they're from Guernsey. The ladies from Guernsey are not wearing national costume. Actually, this is the male national costume that I'm wearing. You can have a look at it later. It's a traditional jumper. Basically, they are giving the impression again that it's a language of the past. It's all to do with tradition, and often in these performances, they tend to dress up in generic old clothes. Or it is something for the tourists. Often language revitalisation is promoted as something that will bring in tourists. But tourists are not going to speak your language for you. Another thing to note is that this poster on the right was at Guernsey Airport. This guy here is a native speaker. He's in his early 60s. And he used to be in charge of the airport marketing. And he had a poster at the airport saying, bye-bye, thank you for visiting, have a good journey in Genesee. But this has now been taken down. And really often language policy is, because it's not coherent, it's dependent on having one person in an organisation who is keen. If that person leaves, then the language policy tends to change, and that poster has now been taken down. Okay. So we have, often in the past we've had some very bad translations. These are totally, really incomprehensible if you didn't know what they were supposed to say. But these bottom two are, I'm afraid it's again not a very good picture because they're taken through a shop window. But it's a range of jewellery which is inscribed in Genesee. And one of the things that I find is that when I talk to people who want to learn the language, they often want to say things like, I love you, will you go out with me? And these are saying that kind of thing. So this has been extraordinarily popular. Unfortunately, the language was very bad until recently, when somebody pointed this out to the jewellery company, and now they are funding the translation service. So that they've got at least better translations. Okay, I think I'm going to skip that one. So this is something that was pointed out quite a long time ago by Elissa McGovern, a couple of people in Scotland who wrote a little book aimed at Celtic language revivalists, saying a language cannot be saved by singing a few songs or having the word printed on a postage stamp. And here you have some exactly doing that in Guernsey, printing a few words on a postage stamp. Yeah. Okay. But one of the of the, to end on a positive note, one of the good things that I noticed when I was in Guernsey in November was the emergence of this group called the Rememberers. As linguists, we tend to call them quite negative terms like semi-speaker, passive speaker, latent speaker. The people who heard it when they were young, often you've got parents speaking the language to each other, but they didn't speak it to the children. And the children learned to understand because they wanted to know what the parents were saying, but they didn't learn to speak actively. And many of these people who are now mainly aged about 55 to 70 want to reactivate their linguistic competence. And they really want to actually use the language. And their motivations, I say, why do you want to do this? Oh, for enjoyment, they say, because we enjoy speaking the language. And Jeanette King has actually, she's a researcher in New Zealand who has looked into motivations for learning Maori in New Zealand. And she has actually identified personal empowerment as a very common motivation for learning a minority language, to make you feel better and for enjoyment, which is probably a more sustainable motivation for language learning, for learning minority language, than trying to make it more like a big language like English or French, because you can't really compete on that level. You can't. It's never going to be seen as something that's going to get you a good job in a very small place like this. But it is important very often for personal identity and personal empowerment. Okay. So kind of like in what's the word? In a conclusion, this is the last slide. In order to create effective language policies for language revitalisation in very small places like the Channel Islands, I think it's important to recognise that there really isn't a one-size-fits-all model. We can learn, which is what we're doing here, from others' experiences, but we can't say, unfortunately, because it's worked in one place, it's going to work in another place. I think we've seen from many places that the commitment of a core group of campaigners is essential. And at the moment, this is what I'm focusing on, is almost like guerrilla language use, kind of below the radar, trying to encourage a small group of core proficient speakers to take the language forward. Because I think we're going to get what I call the dark days very soon, where the native speakers have gone. And in some other places, like the Isle of Man, it took 10, 15 years after that for people to really realise what they've lost. And we need to have some people keeping the language going in that time. But at the same time, we need effective adult learning. I've actually coming to think that adult learning for a highly endangered language is more important than teaching children, because as I said, if you don't have adults, especially younger adults, you know you're never going to get proficient children. At the same time, it's useful to have support from governments. What we've seen in Jersey, and also to an extent in Guernsey. People say, oh, the language is in the schools, we don't have to do anything. And it's a kind of abnegation of responsibility quite often. Once the government starts to supply resources for the language, the grassroots activists tend to kind of retire a bit and give up. And I think it's important not to disempower the grassroots space, because like we've seen in Jersey, that because of the emphasis on the schools, some of the activists feel sidelined. We'd also need to have some strategic direction, because if we just do very small activities without really thinking about what we call ideological clarification, we don't know why we're doing them, we don't know what our aims are, then we're really not going to get very far in actually building a new language community. So in order to do that, I think the most important thing is to actually use your language, to speak it to each other, not just symbolically. So I'm going to say goodbye, merci ben des faits, that's Jeriye, bio des faits in Jersey, and à la prochaine, which means goodbye in Jersey.
잘 어울려. 오늘 김에 아마존 나무 Orain, zuen galderak egiteko unea iritsi da, beraz, aurkezpen honetan zer zalantzaren bat bururatu bazaizue, edo zuen jakin-mina asetu nahiko bazenute, orain da garaia. Zartzetu eskua, eta hasiko gara galderak egiten.
Normandiako hiztunekin edo hango hizkuntzaren edo hiztunekin harremanik baduzue edo gelditzen da Normandian hiztunik edo antza dute zuen hizkuntzak eta Normandia edo Normandiako aldaerek edo.
Shall I use the microphone? Oh, okay, this one works. Okay, great. Yes, the picture I showed of the ladies in old-fashioned clothes was taken at a festival which brings together people from all of the islands and also from mainland Normandy to try and support the languages. There's also an office in Jersey which is run by the local government in Normandy. To try and improve links between the country, between the mainland and the islands. They still see themselves as very, they're quite kind of nationalistically Norman. Because when Normandy invaded England, the ruler was the Duke of Normandy. They still drink a toast to the Queen our Duke. Yeah, she's seen as the Duke of Normandy rather than the Queen of the islands. Yeah, so I was talking to the people in this office in Jersey just last week to try, and they're very interested in promoting the language in both areas. They've got a new newspaper in French for Jersey with a very small section in the local language.